Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studio. We appreciate you joining us today. Tennessee's got one scrimmage. It's already been in the books. The defense was a little ahead of the offense. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the O-line, which is having some folks out right now, which is causing some shifting on a rebuilt line to begin with. We'll chat about it. Joe Milton. Everybody in the country is talking about Joe Milton. Is that too much spotlight on one guy, too much pressure on one guy? That will be a topic. And there's just more energy in the room today because we got a couple of VFLs with us. So you'll know who that is in just a second. Let's get into this first segment of our show. It's brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. And if you find yourself in need of a quality attorney, make the smart move. Go local. Marcos Garza and his team have been a big part of this community for years and years and years. Many of the attorneys who advertise locally can't say that. They pretend to be from here, but their main offices are out of state. So do your research, and any research you're going to do is going to drive you right back to GarzaLaw.com and the Garza Law Firm. Big part of this community right here in Big Orange Country for a long, long time. Garza Law. All right, let's welcome in the panel for today. We've got one more waiting in the wings over there, but the WNML guys are here, Sports Animal 99.1. We got Vince Farrar, we got Will West. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, VFL's Sterling Hinton, Daniel Hood, the Joy Boys are back with us. Good to have you guys here.
Well, glad to be back, John.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton. I'm racing into this because I know this is going to be a jam-packed show, so I'm just diving right in. Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton is in the spotlight for the Vols this year. A pair of SEC coaches were given anonymity to talk with ESPN, and let me show you what the first guy said. It was all about Joe Milton. An absolute cannon for an arm, he said. There's no vertical shot he can't hit. He's a little more of a pocket passer and seems to be comfortable standing back there and making throws. He's got all the right tools you need. He can reach the far numbers. He can spray it all over the field. The next coach said, he's the most dangerous guy. This is an SEC defensive coordinator. He's kind of like what Anthony Richardson was last year. He's humongous. I've watched him in warm-ups and pads, and I'm like, I hope he does not get in. But now he's up. Meanwhile, Bill Connolly of ESPN has been writing a lot about the Vols recently. He ranked Joe Milton as the #1 most important guy in the college football playoff race this year, which is quite a ranking. His comment, if he still takes too many sacks and toes the wrong side of the line between patience and slow decision-making, he'll probably end the year on the bench behind 5-star freshman Nico Iamaleava. But if he's firing quickly to Ramel Keaton, Brew McCoy, and Squirrel White, and fully harnessing the explosiveness of both Josh Heupel's offense and his own right arm, he's almost certainly got the strongest arm in college football. Then the sky's the limit for Tennessee. Forget spoiler talk and put them in the national title conversation. No pressure, Joe. That is a lot of pressure on one guy. That is a lot of hype for one guy. We've got a poll that we'll put up in a minute that's going to look at several different areas. But from a national standpoint, Joe Milton is the story. Vince, is it too much pressure on Tennessee's quarterbacks? Too much spotlight?
I don't think so for a couple of reasons. One, his personality. I think he's one that can handle it. He doesn't want the spotlight. He has said that. It's not something that he desires. So that's a place you want to be as a starting point. The other thing is I don't think he's checking the internet and searching for Joe Milton III and see what everybody's writing about him. A third thing is he's got a lot of weapons around him, so I think he's going to be very successful. So I don't see this scenario of tremendous adversity or major criticism on his shoulders. I think he's well aware of the programs where he's been. He's well aware of his situation, and I think he's got an excellent culture, guys around him, learn from Hendon Hooker. I don't think that's going to be a problem, even if there is a bump in the road along the way.
Look, I don't think it's unfair, and I think it's right, because Joe Milton can absolutely work himself into becoming a top 5 pick in the NFL draft this year.
Yeah.
He can. Now, it could also go the other way. We've seen that happen at Michigan and at Tennessee twice now, right? So for me with Milton, I don't know that he's the most important player for the college football playoff.
That's a bit
but
much.
It could be the difference between Tennessee being in the conversation and not being in the conversation depending on how unlocked Milton is.
Gentlemen, is it too much? And you can take that a couple of different ways. Is it too much, like he's going to crumble under the pressure? Or the other way, is it too much focus on one guy? Does this whole season just ride on Joe Milton? That's another way to look at it.
See, that's kind of where I'm at. Is I think this season doesn't live or die on Joe Milton because I think you've got a great backup that can come in and make plays. You know Josh Heupel's offense revolves around the running game. You've got to get those 3 running backs in there performing well. And if those 3 guys are playing well, Joe Milton's going to have every national accolade that he wants. But if your offensive line's injured and you can't run the football, it doesn't matter what he's doing back there because he's not going to last 6 games because he's going to get hurt.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's just people having something to say about Tennessee football because we are losing Hendon Hooker. And Joe is an incredible talent. And it's amazing how they talked about the incredible skill we have at wide receiver that did I mention one time our 3 tight ends will have game experience. And so I think that the weapons he has at his disposal and be able to put his talent on that, whew, could be spectacular on the offensive side of the ball.
He's also not a 19-year-old. He's been in college football for a half decade. So at this point, he should have learned to compartmentalize and be able to just tune out the pressure and make sure that he's not exposed to it as much.
Yeah, well, let me go ahead and open up the polling. We do this every week. You see it right there on the screen. What is your biggest area of concern for the 2023 Vols? And I went with the 3 things that you hear the most. That's secondary, quarterback, offensive line. And we'll get into talking a little bit about the defense later, a little bit about the offensive line later. But go ahead, you can either click the QR code or you can just go to sportsource.tv/polls. And I mentioned this last week. I talked to the folks behind this company, and again this week, and they were surprised. We had even more people vote last week, and they said, "How are you doing this in the dog days of summer?" I said, "Tennessee sports fans, folks." So keep voting, and those little lines will move as you have yours say. And at the end of the show, we'll come back and reveal your take on the biggest concern. I think I agree most with Daniel here, and that is, when I asked this question, I didn't mean will it crush it. I think is it too much. I should have said is it too much focus. That's another way of putting it. Is it too much focus on Joe Milton? Obviously, quarterback huge. Obviously, in his offense, quarterback huge. But we've seen it. Daniel said it. When the run game was good, Hendon Hooker was good. When it wasn't, he wasn't as good. And Josh Heupel has admitted it. It's run game first. As much as we all talk about the deep shots and the bombs, it's the run game. So to me, of course, he's hugely important. I don't know that he's getting – I would be looking at some other things, not just, Tennessee will go as Joe Milton goes. I think Tennessee will go as far as the run game goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he's the most important player, but you're right, it's not all on him. Look,
that's kind of the way it's been presented nationally, it seems.
Right. The difference between Tennessee contending for a college football playoff, if you're going to look for one other thing besides Joe Milton, is the defense. They have to get a little bit better and not have those horrific days that cost them a ball game. They won some high-scoring games last year, but you can't keep going to that well. The defense is a big part of whether they will be in that college football playoff conversation or not, in addition to Joe Milton.
Fall camp year 1 under Heupel, I kept being told Hendon Hooker's the guy that understands this offense more than anybody else. So my question was, why are you playing Joe Milton then? And the answer was, because if the light bulb's on for him, we're going 9-3 this year. And that was the answer, was the difference in his talent versus Hendon Hooker's talent at the time.
And I got to say, I got to fangirl a little bit because I can't wait for the start of the season, kickoff. We take a touchback. First play of the season, 95 yards in the air, just touchdown. Like, that's what it's all about.
In the air. Why not, baby? Why not?
A guy that drops back to the 15 and can put it to the back pylon of the end zone.
That's not exactly. He went to the Manning camp at 70, but he did say that.
70
I've thrown it 90.
I can't wait just to watch the defense to see, if you see.
As long as his receiver, as long as he's throwing it 90 and the receiver isn't running 75, that's the issue. Make sure the receiver's 90 too.
I'll say this: he's been pretty good with the deep ball in practice, and he's throwing it with a little bit more loft. Like one of his things was on a line, and he's connecting on a lot of those. Does it translate? We'll see. But that area, practice to practice, year to year, he does look improved.
How much can a bowl game like he had? He gets the MVP of the Orange Bowl. He wasn't great in the first half. He wasn't bad in the first half,
right.
But the second half he did what you'd want to do. I mean, he did the things that led to all these writings and these comments. That's what he looked like in that second half. As a former quarterback, how much does that kind of experience for a guy he's kind of scrub work? He lost the job at Michigan, lost the job here. He was okay last year, but it was in mop-up duty. How much does that help him in terms of, okay, now I'm ready?
It's ginormous because people can't forget the team he did that against in the second half was Clemson.
Yeah.
It wasn't somebody who might, Clemson was in the conversation all year long. And so he did that against a great team. And, his upside as a quarterback from a talent standpoint is incredibly high. I mean, he's got the raw dog ability to do some phenomenal things out there. He puts that stuff together with Josh Heupel moving him along, and woof! Like I told you before, back when Josh Heupel came 3 years ago, I'd be babysitting his kids to play out in this offense, baby. I'd do what I had to do to get into with this offense here, boy, I might have been good.
Just a little more exciting than the old Walt Harris scheme.
Well,
that was a good one.
It was a good one.
Different day and
time. Different day and time. Absolutely.
All
Love
right.
Coach Harris.
I'm looking at our poll so far. Most of you are saying offensive line is your concern. Your least concern is quarterback. That's a little surprising to me. Least concern about Joe Milton and your starting quarterback. Secondary behind offensive line. Keep voting. You can change that if you disagree with that. Click, click, click. Take your camera. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. However you want to do it. Tablet. Let me show you what we got coming up the rest of the way on today's show. First of all, will it be an improved defense? We'll talk about that. Carryover from 2022. We always hear, well, it's a brand new team. It doesn't matter who you bring back. This year, whenever you're winning, though, it turns into, well, you look at last year and the success is going to carry over. So which is true? We've also got the VFLs here. We're going to talk to them about the realignment woes. Basically, as players, what would it be like to having to travel across the country and recuperate and deal with focus and fatigue and schoolwork and everything else? We'll talk to them about that. What are UT's expectations going to be in a new 16-team SEC? We've talked that topic out over the years. In a 12-team league, a 14 league, a league with 2 divisions, all that's changing. So what should you expect? What would a good decade from Tennessee be moving forward in a 16-team SEC? Also, we've been pointing the fingers at all these schools that are, well, they're greedy, they're leaving their conference for more cash. If somebody had more cash to offer Tennessee, are we to think they would be different? We'll discuss. Could cash ever lure UT away from the SEC? It's hypothetical. Stick with us. We'll discuss it. And much, much more. But coming up next, when we come back, we'll talk about the defense being ahead of the offense in the first scrimmage and why that was the case. And a lot of it deals with the offensive line. That's next. Coming back on the Sports Source.